This day in Philly sports history is proud to be a part of the Clashing Conferences Sports Fan Network, where passionate fans make powerful content. Check out theclashingconferences.com and join the squad today. What's up, everyone? Welcome to this day in Philly sports history for January 22nd, 2026. I'm your host, Jim Montgomery. Welcome to a Thursday edition of the podcast. A cold, gonna warm up today, I guess, but the calm before the storm. Lots of snow coming, allegedly. So we'll see. Only job in America where you can just throw stuff out there, and if it doesn't stick, no pun intended, you're safe. So we'll see what happens this weekend. All right, speaking of ice and snow, Flyers were out in Utah last night to take on the Mammoth. They got a point, but lost 5-4 in overtime. Very disappointing game. I obviously was not up late to watch this, but in reading and watching some of the replays, they blew this game. They were up 3-0. They had a 2-goal lead into the third. They had a shot at an open net with under 2 minutes left that would have probably iced it and couldn't get it done, losing 5-4 to the Mammoth. Kristen Dvorak had 2 goals and an assist. They got the point, but now tomorrow they run into the buzzsaw that is the Colorado Avalanche, a team with only 5 losses, far and away the best team in the NHL. But I guess on a positive note, they did get a point, the second straight game that the Flyers got a point. Tomorrow will be a good measuring stick game to see just how far the Flyers need to go to be a Stanley Cup contender. Sixers in action tonight down at the X versus the Rockets. Now, there should be a good game. Looking forward to this one. Hopefully we see Joe and PG, in this game. And then, as I mentioned, we're not going to mention the team that plays football at Lincoln Financial Field until we have some news. Still lots of things going on with interviews and everything. It does appear that they are turning over every stone possible, getting spurned by some big names, but hey, such is life. So we'll see what happens, but I will update you once they get there. If you do want more Eagles coverage, the new Brotherly Birds breakdown is out. Well, the one from last week. We're taking a couple-week hiatus here, and we'll be back the week of the Super Bowl. All right, yesterday's trivia question. I asked who was the Flyers' all-time assist leader. Lots of guesses, but this guy kind of flew under the radar, surprisingly. It was Bobby Clark, who has 852 of them for the Flyers. The next closest is Claude Giroux with over 600. So thank you to everybody who reached out. It was a fun one yesterday. I did not expect this one to stump as many people as they did. All right, some quick housekeeping. Be sure to follow me on social media at Philly Jimbo on all platforms. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, Jimbo_Mont. Continue to spread the word. As I mentioned, the Brotherly Birds breakdown. We're taking a couple weeks off. Be back for the Super Bowl, and then still up in the air with where the schedule is going to go from there. But the best way to stay in that loop is to subscribe to the YouTube channel. And lots of just things in flux. I haven't updated this in a while, but I feel as though next week, this round of my day job search is going to kind of come to a resolution. 2 bigger, longer interviews at 2 school districts. So we'll see what happens with that. Podcast is not going anywhere. Just might look different from a scheduling standpoint, depending on how things go. But figured I keep everybody up to date with that. And then February is Black History Month. And this Black History Month, I'm switching it up slightly. We're going to go back to the beginning. And before some of these people were stars, before they were legends, before they were the names that you know, they have Philly stories. And I'm going to talk and discuss how this region helped shape their greatness. So all February, our Black History Month spotlight is titled Forged by Philly. How Philadelphia and the Philadelphia area forged and made these athletes who they were. So stay tuned for that. That kicks off in February. All right, January 22nd. Big day for Phillies Hall of Famers. On this day in 1976, Robin Roberts was elected to the Hall of Fame with 86.9% of the vote in his fourth year of eligibility. Robin spent 14 years in Philly, was a seven-time All-Star, had 234 wins with the Phils, over 1,800 strikeouts. Probably most remembered for being a member of the Whiz Kids 1950 team. But Robin Roberts elected to the Hall of Fame this day in 1976. And then fast forward to 2019, Roy Halladay, in his first year of eligibility, was elected with 85.4% of the vote, pitched 4 years here, won a Cy Young, 3 All-Star appearances, of course, the perfect game and the playoff no-hitter. But Roy Halladay and Robin Roberts both elected into the Hall of Fame on this day in 1976 and 2019, respectively. And then we're going to go to 1973, and Philly's own hometown hero, Smokin' Joe Frazier, who was the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world, took on undefeated and number 1 ranked contender George Foreman down in Kingston, Jamaica. Unfortunately for Smokin' Joe, this was all George Foreman, as he knocked him down 5-6 times and got the second round TKO. Howard Cosell famously with the "Down goes Frazier, down goes Frazier." It was one of 4 losses for Smokin' Joe in his Hall of Fame career, but Frazier, Foreman on this day in 1973, Kingston, Jamaica, George Foreman with the second round TKO. Down goes Frazier. All right, fast forward to 1992. Sixers beat the Knicks 119-109 at the Spectrum. Charles Barkley with 37 points and 14 rebounds, both game highs. Armand Gillian put in 24. Hersey Hawkins has 23. And I got to laugh because guys like Armand Gillian, Charles Shackelford, those are the guys that Barkley complained about while he was here that they were putting him in. I say it all the time. One of my favorite quotes is he was excited. They told us we got Shaq. Didn't realize it was Charles Shackelford. But the story in this game was Charles Barkley, who with those 14 rebounds passed Wilt Chamberlain and Billy Cunningham to become the Sixers' all-time career leader in rebounds. Key word there is Sixers, because he is not the franchise's all-time leader. That distinction belongs to Dolph Schayes, who played 14 years in Syracuse, 1 year in Philly. So the franchise leader is Dolph Schayes, but the Sixers' all-time leader is Charles Barkley, who got that distinction today in 1992 in a 119-109 win versus the Knicks. 5 years later, in 1997, more Sixers. And that post-Charles Barkley era, they just went into a free fall. They did their best Tom Petty impersonation, and they were free falling. But this day in 1997, they snapped a 13-game losing streak, beating the Celtics, who were equally as bad as the Sixers, 127-125 in overtime up in Boston. Jerry Stackhouse led all scorers with 38. Rex Walters, remember him on the Sixers? Again, this is how bad it was for the Sixers. He scored 27. Rookie Allen Iverson had 26. Even Clarence Witherspoon, my all-time favorite draft bust, had a double-double in this game. So Clarence Witherspoon messed around, had a double-double. As the Sixers snapped a 13-game losing streak, beating the Celtics 127-125 in overtime. God, those teams were terrible. Although, when AI came during this time, it was starting to get a little bit more exciting, despite the fact that they were terrible. All right, then fast forward to 2024. More Sixers, as the Sixers beat San Antonio 133-123. Their first game ever against sensation Victor Wembanyama, who, to his credit, Victor Wembanyama had 33 against the Sixers on this day, but it was no match for Joel Embiid, who scored 70 points on 24-41 shooting, made 21 of his 23 free throws, added 18 rebounds, 5 assists, in the process breaking Wilt Chamberlain's Sixers single-game scoring record of 68, which he set in 1967. It also was Joe's 21st consecutive game with 30-plus points. He would get that streak to 22 before his season ended with the injury, which I guess he came back in that series, but end it in Golden State when Kuzma fell on his knee and tore his ACL. But Joe was on fire during that season. And it just is more frustrating as the Sixers were actually up near the top of the standings and just continued to fall once Joe went down. But on this day, 2024, Joe scores 70 points, setting the Sixers single game record, breaking Wilt Chamberlain's record of 68 points.
Hey guys, guess what time it is? It's cookie season. I'm Ella here, your favorite Girl Scout, and we have your oldies but goodies. Lemonades, dimmits, peanut butter sandwiches, and more. This year we have a new cookie flavor called the Explore Mug. My goal is 200 boxes, so please make that happen. You're gonna buy cookies anyway, so why not buy them from me?
All right, that does lead us to today's trivia question. Joe's teammate back in 2024 and current teammate Tyrese Maxey the other night had a career high with 8 steals in the game against the Pacers. The Sixers team record is 9, shared by 4 guys. Who are they? Hit me up on the Back to the Future voice and text line 267-495-8531. Get that. Anything else Philly sports related off your chest. But today's trivia question, what 4 players, I should say, hold the Sixers single game record for steals in a game? All right, it is Thursday. Time for a little Throwback Thursday brought to you by Philly Goat. Go to phillygoat.com. Use the promo code Jim Montgomery to take 10% off of your order. They got you covered for your Philly sports apparel needs. So go to Philly Goat and use that promo code Jim Montgomery to take 10% off your order. All right, I read this article in the Inquirer the other day, and I figured this was the perfect Throwback Thursday topic. And there was an article about the old Eagles court, jail, whatever you want to call it, down in the basement of the vet. And it was very interesting. I always forget that we had a court with an actual judge in the basement of the vet who had full power to deliver verdicts, essentially. But it all started because of the Monday Night Football game versus the 49ers, November of 97, where there was like 60-some fights that broke out. Somebody fired a flare gun over from one side of the field to the other. Jeff Lurie, Joe Banner, or I don't know if it was Joe Banner, but Jeff Lurie, I know future mayor Jim Kenney was involved in this. They wanted to clean up the image of the vet and the Philadelphia fans. So they built a makeshift court in one of the closets, I think, in the vet. Seamus McCaffrey was the judge who presided over, and he did it for free. He was a legitimate judge. I believe he still practices today, but basically looked at quality of life crimes. So essentially public drunkenness, thinking back to the vet, if you've ever been up to the 700 level, I'm sure you know this, public urination, fist fights. The more serious ones obviously went down, but most of the people, again, he had full authorization and jurisdiction. Most people received fines between $150 and $400. According to the article, a lot of times there was an ATM right there in the courtroom. He would make them pay on the spot. A lot of community service was doled out. Some people would lose their tickets, bringing grown men to tears for losing their season tickets for being a drunken idiot in the stands, essentially. Now, the court and the jail was meant to, quote unquote, clean up the vet, but unfortunately had the opposite reaction, as in typical during this time period when we're in the midst of the curse of Billy Penn. Philly fans wore it as a badge of honor. Yeah, this is how tough our place is to play. We have a jail and a courtroom in the basement. Luckily for me, I had 2 years at the vet as a season ticket holder. Again, luckily, I never had to appear because, not saying, I guess the statute of limitations at this point is up on this, but I may have partook in some of those activities that would have landed me in front of Judge McCaffrey. But luckily, the move to the link kind of cleaned everything up. It still has pockets of some of the old school vet people in there that like to get rowdy. But for the most part, things at Lincoln Financial failed. But the Eagles jail and the courtroom in the basement is today's Throwback Thursday topic. Thought it was interesting. Definitely brought back some memories and just a stark reminder of how, despite the fact that this season ended the way it did, those were some shitty teams back then. So be glad for what you got, Philadelphia. And that is brought to you by Philly Goat. Go to phillygoat.com. Use the promo code Jim Montgomery to take 10% off of your order. And then finally today, turning the page, the events that changed Philly sports forever. This one, we saw it coming. We wanted it probably a couple years before it happened. But 2013, when the Eagles finally parted ways with Andy Reid, firing him. And I just want to go on record because at the time, much like you're hearing a lot of talk out of Buffalo right now, you heard, I know for the most part, Steelers fans right now are in the similar situation, similar boat as where we were with Andy Reid, but there's still some people saying, why are you getting rid of Tomlin or letting him walk away? This, that, and the other. It was time for Andy to go. He was coming off a 4-12 season. I feel like at that point it had played his course. He had Donovan, couldn't get anything done. Had a decent run for a minute with Michael Vick. Again, couldn't get it done. Had some good players in place, though. Like, I'll never take any of that away from Andy, but with everything he had going on in his personal life at that time, 14 years, it was time to move on for both parties. And I think what's lost in that a lot of times is people are like, oh, the Eagles. But I think just like with Mike Tomlin right now, it's a good time for him personally to not be the coach there. It was good for Andy to get a fresh start. Now, obviously, he wasn't unemployed long going to Kansas City, but what this did for Philly sports was kind of ended that stability. We kind of went through, if you go even back to the end of the Dick Vermeil era, you had Marion Campbell, then it was Buddy Ryan, then Rich Kotite, then Ray Rhodes, and it was like those guys just could not get over the hump. But Andy came in with a plan. Andy brought stability to this organization. Obviously, that led to the Chip Kelly experiment. And I do think the Eagles realized they made a ton of mistakes post-Andy. I don't think they would question whether or not they should have fired him at the time. But I think in that process, and we talk all the time on Tuesdays about growing and learning from mistakes, the Eagles made a ton of mistakes. It was when Howie Roseman got put in the closet and came out. But those mistakes and that growth led us to where we are now. Obviously, it led to 2 Super Bowl titles. It changed the way they do business. And I think that's sort of where we're at with the offensive coordinator search. They don't want to, the front office doesn't want to necessarily give up all that control, and maybe rightfully so, because that was part of some of the issues with Andy as well. But for us Eagles fans, we had to get rid of Andy to go through Chip to realize what we had. And it was the same with the front office. They had to get rid of Andy, go through Chip to realize what they valued and what they wanted. Andy made the Eagles relevant, though, so always will thank him for that. Like, it took the Eagles from, and I've used this a lot over the past few weeks, but during that time, the Eagles were a second-class organization. They were not where the 49ers, the Packers, the Cowboys were at that time. Hell, even like the Giants at that point. So Andy made them relevant. Yes, it was frustration upon frustration. But like I said, that relationship with Andy Reid had run its course, and the Eagles didn't fail with Andy Reid. They learned from him, as I mentioned, and that's what you want to do. They learned. The whole Chip Kelly fiasco was a huge mistake, but they learned from it. And when the time came, they took what they learned from the whole Andy Reid experience and finally put the team in position to win a game, and they did a better job. See what I did there? But the ultimate irony in all of this is Andy had to leave for the Eagles to win and to win himself. But at the same time, the Eagles needed to leave Andy in order to become champions. So that's the ultimate irony there. Andy should have won a Super Bowl title here, but didn't. but due to the fact Andy left, it in a way directly led to the Eagles winning the Super Bowl. And obviously Andy did get his Super Bowls with the Chiefs, but our turning the page event that changed Philly sports forever is Andy Reid getting fired by the Eagles. It's about time, but Big Red, we still love you. All right, be sure to let me know what the answer to today's trivia question is. What 4 players share the Sixers single game steals lead? And if you watched the Sixers game the other night against the Pacers, or I guess it wasn't the Pacers, the Suns game, you probably will know the answer to this because I stole this directly from Comcast Sportnet or Comcast Philly or Phillies, whatever the channel's called now. On this day in 2024, Joel Embiid set a Sixers single-game record with scoring 70 points in a 133-123 win over the Spurs. In 1997, Charles Barkley became the Sixers' all-time leader in career rebounds when he had 37 points and 14 rebounds that was 1992, in a 119-109 win over the Knicks. And in 1997, that's when the Sixers snapped their 13-game losing streak. Jerry Stackhouse with the game-high 38 points. We'll have more on those Sixers tomorrow. Get ready for the Flyers out in Colorado. Could be a bloodbath. And any updates, obviously, on the Eagles' head or offensive coaching search. Not even going to mention the summer team here in Philly because just discussed it with the fact that they're content with what they have and they're going to run it back again. Everybody's older, but they're running it back. So we're not ready to talk about them yet. This has been This Day in Philly Sports History for January 22nd, 2026. My name is Jim Montgomery. Go have yourselves a Thursday. And until next time, I'll see you when I see you.